The studio lights on The View were a little too bright that morning. The air thick with that kind of polite tension that feels like everyone already knows something is about to go wrong, but pretends they don't. The producers were whispering behind the cameras. The floor manager kept adjusting his headset, and even the band seemed to play a little softer than usual. Denzel Washington was seated at the table, posture calm, hands folded, eyes steady. He'd been on the show before, many times in fact, but something about this visit felt different. He was there to promote a film about forgiveness, redemption, and rebuilding community, but under that easygoing surface, the conversation was set to veer somewhere darker. Whoopi Goldberg opened, as she always did, professional but friendly. "Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Denzel Washington," she said, and the audience erupted with the kind of applause that feels rehearsed, but still respectful. Denzel smiled, nodded, and said softly, "Good to be here, Whoopi. Thank you for having me." Joy Behar leaned in with her trademark grin. "Denzel, we were just saying backstage, you might be the last real movie star left." Denzel chuckled. "Nah, Joy, there's plenty of us out there. Maybe we just don't tweet as much." The crowd laughed, easing the tension for a moment. For the first 10 minutes, it was pleasant. They talked about his film, about his time directing, about mentoring young actors, and the energy in the room was steady. But sitting across from him, Sunny Hostin was waiting. She had her notes, her questions, and a quiet determination behind her smile. When it was her turn, she started carefully. "Denzel, you've had one of the most incredible careers in Hollywood. 2 Oscars, decades of iconic roles. But you've also been known for staying away from political conversations. A lot of people wonder why." Denzel looked at her. "I don't see that as avoidance," he said. "I see it as focus. I talk about what I know, craft, community, faith, growth. I'm not a politician. I'm an artist." Sunny smiled, but it wasn't warm. "But don't you think that kind of silence can sometimes be a luxury? You've built enormous influence. People listen to you. When you don't use that to address issues that affect Black Americans, isn't that privilege?" The audience went quiet. Denzel tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Privilege," he repeated. "That's an interesting word to throw at a man who's been working since he was 12. Sunny didn't back down. "I mean that your success puts you in a position to make change, and people wonder why someone with your voice doesn't speak out more boldly." Denzel gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I do speak out," he said, "just not the way you want me to. I've built programs. I've funded schools. I mentor kids who don't have fathers. That's speaking out. It's just not televised." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Joy looked at Sunny, as if to say, "Don't push this." But Sunny pressed forward anyway. "I'm not dismissing your philanthropy," she said, "but when the country's dealing with injustice, don't you think public figures have a duty to raise their voices?" Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, the smile now completely gone. "You know, Sunny, I hear that a lot from people who talk for a living. But here's the thing, I don't owe speeches to anybody. I owe work. I owe effort. And if people need to hear me yell to believe I care, then they're not really listening." The audience applauded softly, unsure if they were supposed to. Sunny shifted in her chair. "I just think that staying quiet in moments of crisis sends a message." He interrupted gently. "It does. It sends a message that you can do more than talk." Joy tried to lighten the moment. "Well, we're definitely not short on talk around here." Laughter trickled in, but it didn't stick. The tension had a pulse now, slow and steady. Sunny spoke again, her voice sharpening. "With respect, Denzel, a lot of Black leaders have said that neutrality helps the oppressor, not the oppressed." Denzel's eyes flickered. "Neutrality," he said. "You think because I'm not marching with a camera in my face I'm neutral? Let me tell you something, Sunny. I've been mentoring young Black men since before social media existed. I've paid for kids to go to college without anyone knowing my name was on that check. That's not neutrality. That's action." The audience clapped louder now. He looked around briefly, then back at Sunny. "But the problem today," he continued, "is that people think passion equals progress. It doesn't. Noise doesn't fix things. Work does." Sunny folded her hands. "So you don't think it's important to speak truth to power? He nodded slowly. I think it's more important to live it. That line landed like thunder. Whoopi jumped in quickly. Let's all take a breath. But Denzel wasn't done. See, that's part of the issue. Every time someone doesn't fit the mold, they get labeled silent or disconnected or privileged. No, I'm just not performing my concern for your approval. Sunny leaned forward. But don't you think that visibility matters? That someone in your position has a platform. And what have you done with yours? Denzel asked quietly. The words hung in the air. The studio was dead silent. Sunny blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. I'm asking, Denzel said calmly. You sit here every day judging people. What have you built? Who have you helped? Who have you lifted up when the cameras weren't rolling? There were gasps from the audience. Even Joy looked rattled. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Sunny recovered. I've spent my career giving voice to injustice. Denzel shook his head. You've spent your career talking about injustice. There's a difference. The applause came again, louder this time. Sunny's jaw tightened. So you think activism doesn't belong on television? I think activism doesn't need a spotlight, Denzel said. I think sometimes the loudest voices are covering up the quiet truth that they haven't changed a thing. Joy tried again to intervene. Let's not gang up here. Denzel raised a hand. It's all right. I'm used to this. People always expect me to be angry, to fit into a role. But I'm not angry, Joy. I'm just tired of people confusing sincerity with silence. The audience clapped again. Sunny crossed her arms, visibly irritated. So you're saying we're all just talking heads? Denzel smiled faintly. If the description fits. Laughter broke out across the audience, uneasy laughter, the kind that fills space when truth cuts too deep. Sunny's expression hardened. You know, Denzel, that sounds dismissive. There's value in dialogue. There's more value in example, he said. But example doesn't get ratings. Whoopi tried to pivot. Let's talk about your film. But Denzel leaned back, exhaling slowly. No, Whoopi, let's finish this. Because it's not about the film anymore, is it? It's about control. You want to decide how I should represent my people, my beliefs, my silence, my words. You want me to play your version of a black man. But that's not going to happen. The audience burst into applause, so loud the cameras shook. Joy's eyes darted to the producer's offset. Sunny tried to reply, but her voice faltered. Denzel looked directly at her. You see, Sunny, you think I'm quiet because I'm scared. I'm quiet because I've seen more than you'll ever understand. I've watched what happens when anger replaces purpose. I've seen people destroy themselves trying to prove they care. Sunny opened her mouth again, but he continued. And I've seen how this very show, turns real conversation into confrontation because it sells. You don't want truth. You want spectacle. The words hit like a gavel. He straightened in his chair. I'm not giving you that. I'm not your performance. I came to talk about redemption. You came to score points. We're not the same. The crowd was on their feet now, clapping, cheering, phones in the air. Denzel stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, and said, Whoopi, Joy, I thank you. But I think we're done here. Sunny tried to speak, but he looked at her one last time. Don't mistake restraint for weakness. Sometimes walking away is the loudest truth you can tell. And with that, he turned, nodded to the audience, and walked off the stage. For a few seconds, no one moved. The cameras stayed on an empty chair. The control booth hesitated before cutting to commercial. But the feed had already gone viral. Someone backstage had clipped the moment and sent it out within minutes. By noon, hashtag Denzel Washington walks off was trending across every platform. Comment sections lit up. He didn't lose his cool, he owned the room. Sunny Hostin just got taught a masterclass in grace. This is why we respect Denzel Washington. Calm, strong, and uncompromised. Clips of the exchange hit millions of views before the afternoon broadcast ended. Every talk show and podcast replayed the footage. Some tried to spin it, others defended him, but the narrative was already out of their hands. That night, Denzel was photographed leaving a charity dinner in Los Angeles. A reporter asked if he had any comment on what happened that morning. Denzel smiled, put his hand on the reporter's shoulder, and said, "No comment." The words spoke for themselves. But later, at a film festival panel, someone asked again. This time, he answered. "You can't fight every battle," he said. "Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is leave the noise behind." My mother used to tell me, "Denzel, you don't argue with people committed to misunderstanding you." That's what I remember today. He paused, smiled, and added, "I didn't walk off angry. I walked off peaceful." There's a difference. The audience applauded quietly, the kind of applause that comes from understanding rather than excitement. The clip of that quote went as viral as the original confrontation. It played on every network, every feed. Commentators called it a masterclass in dignity. Young actors shared it as inspiration. Older viewers called it the moment television remembered what composure looked like. Sunny Hostin tried to explain her side on the next episode of The View. She said, "I respect Denzel Washington, but I stand by my question." The audience reaction was muted. The spark was gone. The internet had moved on, but the shadow of that moment lingered. Joy looked uncomfortable the entire episode. Whoopi didn't say much. The laughter that usually filled the room sounded forced. The View had lost its rhythm. Meanwhile, Denzel kept moving, quietly, gracefully as always. He returned to work on his foundation, appeared at community events, and never once referenced the incident again. He didn't have to. Everyone else already had. Weeks later, a journalist asked him in another interview what he thought people should take away from the confrontation. He leaned back, thoughtful, and said, "We live in a world that confuses noise for change. But noise fades. Character stays. What matters isn't how loud you speak. It's how true you stay when others test you." That was the real ending, the one no camera could script. Because Denzel Washington didn't just walk off a television set that day. He walked away from the need to prove anything to anyone. And in a world addicted to outrage, that might be the boldest statement of all.